Hey everybody, welcome to Keep Warm Together, the podcast we record right here at Midwinter while we're working on our first game, Scavengers. And I'm here with two awesome people today. Kyle.
Who, me?
Yeah, perfect introduction. And Aaron.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for joining me in this podcast.
You are very welcome.
We are going to talk about video games and making them and things of that nature. But before we get started, let's talk about both of you and your backgrounds and how you arrived here at Midwinter. Aaron, why don't you start?
Okay, so initially I was a junior at DigiPen, where I was studying for engineering, for game development specifically. And I got an internship with Midwinter for a summer, and then they offered me part-time through the school year, and then they gave me full-time once I graduated.
And you just got full-time?
And I just got full-time.
Yay!
I just graduated earlier this month,
Yay.
like April.
Here's a little bit of an applause.
Oh, thanks.
Yay,
We don't
thanks,
need the sound
Kyle.
effect. It's just done. Yeah, I remember seeing that go around.
Now, can you please add like a lot of clapping?
No, there's no editing in this podcast.
Carlos, I'm going to need a lot of things edited.
You are maybe cut right now from this particular episode already. Aaron, yeah, that's awesome. And more and more times nowadays, people are going through school and like landing their job. I remember back when I was coming up, that just wasn't even an option. It seems like it was a much... Yeah, I'm really old. Aaron just looked at me like, really?
No.
I think that happens all the time.
No, because it's just like a lot of people at my school. I lucked out because I got a job. A lot of people that are graduating from like my school and other colleges, like only 33% first of all make it through college, and then less than I think 50% of my class has a job right now.
Wow.
So I'm in the lucky
You are
crowd.
the lucky crowd. Yeah. But it can happen, and it has
Yeah,
for you.
and
So
it
that's
did.
awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about Kyle.
That's stuck about me.
Yeah, how did you arrive here?
Well, I could get the long or the short story.
Do the short story.
Okay, so the short story was I graduated from RIT. I'm probably one of the few people here who's in their 20s and not from DigiPen.
Oh, right.
A lot of our studios from DigiPen, but I'm from Rochester, New York.
Which is close to where I grew up, in
yeah.
Syracuse.
Yeah, it's just like an hour drive away.
Yeah.
And then after I graduated from RIT, I actually had a brief internship at 343, which is where I actually met a lot of the crew here. And that was like my junior year of college. And then graduated, worked for about a year and a half at a advertising or marketing, I guess, company called Sapient Razorfish. I did some front-end work for them. And then a little while later, got a call from FIDA who said, hey, we have a great, awesome game coming out and wanted to know if you want to be a part of the team. I said, heck yes.
You're like, heck? No, that's okay, thanks. Yeah, that's cool. And it really does mean a lot when you have these interactions with people at companies, and then if they're great interactions, later down the road, it might be a job.
It's true.
That's what that turned into.
Networking is key.
And that's cool that 343 in your junior, that's like awesome to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I was super lucky to even land that because I was just interviewing for Microsoft in general, and then I walk in and FIDA's interviewing me. He's like, yeah, so I'm like the lead gameplay developer for Halo 5, and I just kind of like shat myself a little bit.
Oh.
We're gonna have to bleep that out.
You might, I can't bleep it out of my memory. I'm just like thinking of that now. Okay, cool. So that's how you both got here. So let's talk about really quick. We can't say too much about this game.
No, we can't.
But we can talk about like a day in the life of an indie dev, which is essentially what we are. And not me, but, well, I am.
Yeah.
Just not in this game. So, Aaron, take me through a day here at Midwinter. Like, it probably varies greatly.
Sort of. I don't know. I guess it's easily condensed, though, into, like, we get here, we set up, we do our
Morning
stand
thing.
Up. Stand up.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
I know these things.
It's not a sit down, it's a stand up.
Yeah. And then after stand up, where we tell everyone what we do for that day, what our tasks are planned, I pretty much just sit at my computer and either code or send messages to people about tasks, like questions I have or issues I'm having, and sometimes FIDA comes and checks up on me. And I tell him I don't need anything. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, over and over again. And then I go out to lunch sometimes, and then...
and then I go home, Carlos, and sometimes I sleep.
I don't know. Like, I guess I have a really boring routine here of just coding and doing my job.
yeah, but coding can be fun. I mean, so what are some of the things that maybe we can say that you work on? Not specifics, like, within the game, but...
Yeah, so...
types of coding.
I primarily do UI, gameplay, and AI. Or AI is kind of wrapped into gameplay, but I primarily just work on like weapons and stuff like that, as well as both AI that's linked to the player and enemy AI. And I work with a lot of the engineers, designers, and artists on coordinating all of those things to make sure that they not only act right, but they look good to players, and they look good with the animations they're supposed to do, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Yeah, when I first got here, I saw AI next to your name in some capacity. I was like, oh, let's talk about AI. But I realized it's in a different kind of setting. It's like you're looking at all the systems together and how they like should behave the right way.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah. So that seems fun. Okay, so what's your day like, Kyle?
What's a day in the life of Kyle?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
again, the short version.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
We don't have all day.
Reese sends you the Daily Mail text.
Yeah. I don't know if it's been mentioned yet. Aaron and I are both engineers.
Oh, yeah. We code.
Right.
Yeah. So we both code.
You both code. Yes.
I'm probably one of the more, I guess I'd say, social engineers. Like I love to run around and like kind of coordinate a lot with people, and I tend to have a lot of opinions about like the way we should structure some of our solutions, as well as kind of taking on a bit of a role about like the overall architecture that we decide to go with. So I tend to run around a lot, talk with a lot of engineers, try and like coordinate how our solutions should look. So in the office, a lot of times I'm probably spending more time standing up and walking over to FITA than I am at the computer actually typing out code.
And when we do the stand-ups in the morning, lots of times it does sound like you're like, yeah, whenever anybody needs me, I'll be around. Like, that's like one of my things.
I mean, another thing that a lot of the engineers do is anytime like designers have technical questions, like we're kind of the help desk, I guess, for them. So we'll get asked a lot of questions from them about like, hey, I'm trying to do this. What would be the best way to do that? And we kind of advise them on how to do that. So, I'd say like a lot of social interaction is kind of what I do, and I don't really get to the coding till more or less the end of the day, and I can get like 1 or 2 hours in.
Yeah, it does seem like there is a lot of that, which I love about this job and this particular size of a company, is that we all can run around and be like, what about this?
Yeah.
What about that? And I think that's something that I'm going to try to show more of in the videos and stuff, because that's just so cool. And I know that a lot of bigger companies don't work that way.
Yeah.
And I know that there's pitfalls as well, though, right? Like there's positives and negatives for that. So we all know the positives, which is we can get a lot of interesting stuff done, and we can communicate with each other so easily and quickly and make changes. Is there a negative side at all to like having it be so small? Is there something that we're missing from, because these AAA companies have, so many people and so many resources?
We just don't have the manpower that like another studio, like 343, for example, has with like hundreds of developers, right? Like they can, if there's a feature to work on, they can generally get it done faster. But the issue with larger companies is that there's also a lot of miscommunication, and like you have to like go through a lot of layers to actually communicate to other disciplines like artists or designers. So I guess that's like a kind of a pro and kind of a con, is that we just don't have the raw manpower to maybe do as much stuff like a full Halo game would have right now currently, but we have the ability to at least like, where am I trying to go with this? Talk with the other disciplines quicker than somebody at 343 would be able to maybe actually get a feature in the way that we want to, as opposed to getting it in quicker.
Right, and we're not like going down the hall and trying to find what the person is that even does the thing that we have a question about.
And sometimes with like their producers are like, no, you shouldn't even be talking to them directly. You need to talk to me, and then I'll ask
the middle person.
The middle person.
Yeah.
And you don't have that here.
Yeah.
Which is also the issue of having more people, is you have so many middle people.
Right. Yeah, there's no middle person between me and Kyle, and I would just just come up and be like, Kyle, I literally just did it. And I was like, I need this fix with this camera thing. And you're like, go away. But you really can't. There's no middle person to say go away.
That's true. So Midwinter is looking to hire a middle person.
Literally, it's called the middleman.
Yeah, or middle woman. Anybody?
The middle
person.
The middle person. I mean, yeah, what Aaron said is like basically spot on. Like larger studios can kind of do a lot of stuff that small studios just don't have the manpower to do. Another thing that I would basically bring up is that being able to wear a lot of hats kind of has its downsides as well. Like you'll see some engineers like take on like specific areas of the game, and then based on just the small team, sometimes they'll have to be taken off that area.
Oh, right.
And then if they're like suddenly taking ownership of that different area, and then they have to move someone back to the old area that they used to own, and now suddenly like instead of having people who are extremely intimate with how that system works,
right.
You have a lot of people who have a general knowledge of how it works, but like the expertise on each area changes a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, when it comes to certain areas, people will be like, well, I'm handling the system in general now, but the person who wrote that specific system is over here,
right.
and they're busy, like, doing this thing. And
but that is a double-edged sword in the other way, too, because then if you have the person who just can make the change quickly, or, you know, like, oh, they came up with this idea, and they can make that change, even though they don't stay on it, they might have made a great change instead of, like, having to wait for the specialized person to actually get to it in their queue of their other stuff. I don't know. It's back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, like, it is a double-edged sword. It's just, it just totally depends on, like, what you end up running into.
Yeah.
Back at, you know, like, when you're working at some of the larger studios, you're like, hey, I have an animation question, not an anime question.
You might also have that question.
You might.
Especially here in this office.
Yeah. I have like an animation question specifically about this. And it's like, okay, this guy knows exactly how it works. He'll answer your question in like 5 seconds. Whereas,
right.
you know, here it could be like someone's like, well, I just started digging into it, so I can dig into it and let you know.
Yeah.
The nice thing, though, is that, like, you know, if one person leaves, that doesn't shut down the development of
That's
that
true, too.
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, because I've seen so many things like get started, like you said, here, and like people are all working on this one thing, and then like a bunch of people are gone, and then a few people left are like, yeah, I think let's talk about this for longer, you know. Yep. Speaking of a couple like specific things that you know you've been thrown on specifically, I just said specific twice. Melee came up at some point. We were at a stand up and. I just remember you often saying, like, yeah, I'm on Melee again.
That was probably for a good, like, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, and so let's talk about the specific things you're doing within Melee, because we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Because we had a talk off podcast about this. And let's just, why don't you tell me about how that works, the way that you are working with Melee?
Yeah, so, like, specifically, I guess I could say the hat that I'm kind of been wearing for a long while now has kind of been, like, the animation engineer. And so, like, animators kind of, like, they're doing a lot of work, and, like, they kind of reach a little bit into the engineering perspective, especially our one of our animators, Reese. He works a lot in blueprints to, like, blend animations together. But there's a bridge that basically has to be connected between that world and the gameplay world as far as, like, having gameplay sort of trigger the correct animation events that the animators need to hook into.
Right.
Anyway, that's kind of, like, the role that I've sat in for a long time. And so when it comes to Melee, you might think that a lot of it is basically just how does the animation look. But there's a lot of like actually behind the scenes work that we're trying to do right now. For example, like one of the golden standards I think right now for Melee systems that gets commonly brought up is like God of War.
Oh yeah, because it's amazing.
Yes, it's a very good system, and like it's not just the animators who made that, but there was also a lot of engineering that went into that as well. And like they did a whole slew of stuff from like doing this basically double IK when the weapon makes contact with the character. They attach the weapon at a specific point, and they have to like do this like weird IK thing where like they basically have to match the arms so that the hands fit on the right part of the weapon.
And IK for the audience at home?
It's called inverse kinematics. Okay. It's to basically give like a rough estimate. It's basically like instead of saying like the rotation of this joint and this joint puts my hand here, it's like saying I want to put my hand here. So what should my rotations of my joints be? So it's like the opposite. It's sort of like reverse.
That comes kind of back to when our first podcast, which was podcast episode 0, just before we had this fancy equipment. And Daniel was talking about the animation that, he would just come up with, again, without mocap, like just making it up. Like, I think the wolf should look like this and move like that. So it's like, how do we get that arm to be where it is? And that's kind of a little bit that.
Well, in the theme of downsides to being a small studio, they had like a team of, I want to say like 8-10 people or something working on that for the entirety of the game.
Right.
I mean, granted, God of War is like, I would say 80% melee, so it's kind of an important system to have. But in our case, we have me.
They're like, Kyle, get on it.
They're kind of like, hey, Kyle, can you do like the engineering side of melee? And I was like, okay. And they're like, you have, a month and a half. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So
a lot of us do that here, just like, okay, okay, we can do it. Yeah,
well, I mean, like, I get done what I get done, and I'm trying to like budget exactly what I can do and the amount of time that I have.
Yeah.
And there's a couple like really cool tricks that are like super cheap and like drastically improve the experience with melee. So it's like grab the low-hanging fruit first before getting into any of the advanced stuff. So we made quite a few improvements to the melee system as of late. I have no idea what I can actually say about what we've done.
I know. We will say this, because we talked about like how that works, and a lot of it is like you're doing an attack in some way, and then there's also the server to think about. There's like the online part of it, because it looks good offline and we know exactly what it should do, but then there's like, where is that person in virtual space? And how does that and does that come across your plate as well with this, right?
Well, it does. It's sort of one of those things of like there's a lot of moving parts when making a game, especially with like a network game, because a lot of things don't happen necessarily in the same order that you would expect it to.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of like potential pitfalls that you can run into, and it's a lot of consideration. Like for a single player game, it might take you like 1 week to work on this certain feature with certain pitfalls depending on player inputs, but then add multiplayer into it and suddenly like the networking depends on when they tell you when stuff happens, and I'm sorry. It's just a lot more. It's a lot more moving parts.
It's getting to you. It gets to your system.
I know. Yeah.
Aaron, let's talk about some stuff that you work on. What can we say, do you think? Do you have anything that's not secret, that's semi-public? Because I feel like you're working on stuff that is not talkable.
Yeah.
Or maybe like we do with Kyle, like some sort of like system that you got to work on that's a little interesting. I know one thing I want to talk about, but I don't think we can talk about it.
I don't even know what I can talk about, I guess, because I feel like a lot of things I work on are like very specific to like our game.
Yeah.
Like, AI, for example. Like specific types of AI that I obviously can't talk about, but it's...
Well, see, it might also seem similar because if you're looking at with an AI for something, and it's like seeing how that AI interacts with the other AI. You do some of that stuff?
Yeah, because...
I mean, there's wolves in the games. There's some things that we've said.
Yeah, right, so there's wolves and bears, but I don't work on animal AI. I generally work on people AI and then also companions. I don't know.
The thing.
I
know. I can edit this, but I want to say I'll say it now, and then I'll edit it if we don't get approved. Okay. But you work on this thing called keepers.
Yeah.
Yeah, which are potentially companions.
Yeah, and so
in our game.
If we can talk about this.
Okay, let's talk about it for a minute, and then I'll cut it.
Yeah, I'll do a minute. But it's like, so keepers are essentially your companions in the game. And the main issue that we run into a lot with keepers is that it's basically like having a whole nother player on a... So there's... For networking, there's the server, which basically is like the authority of the game, and then there's the client, which is you as the player are generally going to be. The server is going to like tell everyone how like things work, and client's going to give them like the inputs the players do, and like the server's going to tell them, okay, this is the reactions for it basically. And it's a lot of load, just like networking wise, like everyone wants better FPS, better ping and stuff like that. So it's a lot of load just to have one player, but adding a companion in is basically like a whole nother player.
Right.
So main issue we're running into right now is how do we make it so that we can have these two characters on one client without it being like too much for the network to handle.
Right.
So that's my main thing, and it's really difficult to make that work, to just have essentially just one whole player be
less than a player, or
less than a player, but also still a player.
Right.
Still do all the things we want it to do, while it not actually being able to do half the things we want it to do.
What would be some specific things you can do to like lighten that load then? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you...
There are certain things you can do that will only happen on your client side as opposed to on the server. Because the server doesn't have like a screen like you as a player see. It only has, basically it's just like a black box. Like, just imagine your like your computer box without a screen is essentially what the server is doing, right?
Yep.
So there's things that don't need to technically be on the server, like cosmetic wise and appearance wise and motion wise, because it doesn't really matter to the rest of the clients and doesn't really matter to the game as a whole. It only matters to you as a player for you to see for gameplay needs.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some stuff we can take out there, but it's really like tweezing out like what exactly can we like take out and what exactly do we have to leave in to actually make it a good experience for not only yourself but for everyone else, because it is a multiplayer game, for every other player, making sure they're also seeing the stuff they need to see.
Right.
So
that seems tricky. That does seem tricky.
Yeah.
But it seems fun too.
It is fun, and that's why I like my job, because it's fun to work out those like hard problems. Like, if there were already a solved problem, I wouldn't have a job, right? But it would also be boring to just implement solved problems over and over again.
Yeah, that's kind of like an analogy for life. I mean, it's so difficult and crazy, but also rewarding, because you're like, I did it. I accomplished whatever I did, even though the odds were against me.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we go, I thought this would be fun. Let's do a couple of confirmed. Now, you know when you see people go like, oh, there's a deer in the game. Deer's confirmed.
Confirmed.
Right? And it's a big like Steam thing as well. So we have a couple we've already confirmed. One, someone said loot at campsites. I was like, confirmed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Parrots not in Scavengers. Confirmed.
Well, hold on.
Hold on. What?
I can't say it's confirmed.
Really?
Well, I mean, like, just because they didn't see a parrot doesn't mean there isn't a parrot.
Okay, so we'll have a debate on that confirmed.
Yeah.
Because I think that we won't do parrots.
Scourge birds, though.
Scourge birds? Scourge parrots?
That would be cool.
Okay, then maybe it's a yes. Who knows? It's a question mark.
That brings up a lot of my lore writing about the parrots of the Scavengers universe.
Oh, that's true. You do have a whole novel of that.
I have a whole novel.
It's
It's
weird.
on Slack every
It's
day.
weird.
It's so annoying.
Always wants us to read it.
Critique it.
Okay, so parrots not in Scavengers? Question mark. Kyle, give me one. One thing that you know that we can say and say confirmed afterwards. This is just going to be a new segment now. Snow confirmed.
Snow is confirmed. It's not just a lot of dandruff. It's
Ew,
actual snow.
why'd you have to say that? You're definitely cut from the podcast from here on out. Aaron, give me one thing that's confirmed in the game.
Spaceships confirmed.
What type of spaceships?
Wait,
I feel like this is breaking news.
The extractinators. They're technically space. They go through space.
Is this cut?
Man, I don't know.
There's a ship. We can say ship.
Yeah,
confirmed.
there are ships.
There are ships.
And
some they're from space.
And they enter space at least once.
They enter space at least once.
And I would call that a spaceship.
Okay, I'm going to confirm that.
I mean, the logic is airtight.
It is airtight on that. They're definitely ships, and they definitely go into space. They don't just go into the sky. Then they'd be sky ships.
Yeah. No,
so they're not sky ships.
They're in the spaceships.
Yeah. So you're right. We just had to drill down on it.
Yeah.
Okay, the podcast is over. That was my confirmed segment. I'm not sure if I'll ever do it again. But Kyle and Aaron, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Make sure you go to scavengersgame.com. Go to instagram.com/scavengersgame. Go to Twitter at play_scavengers. We have a Discord. Look for the link in the show notes of this video because it is on YouTube right now. And then twitch.tv/Midwinter Entertainment. It's a little bit trickier. Got to remember that one. But you want to subscribe now or follow because we're going to put something up pre-E3.
Are you telling us or are you telling the audience?
I guess I'm telling you both.
Everyone.
Everybody,
I didn't even know we had a Twitch thing.
Look behind you. No, down lower. Shit. Okay, never mind. That went poorly.
You said down lower.
No, yeah, Twitch Scavengers Twitch streams.
Yeah, it's on my eye level. You said to look lower.
Oh.
I'd be more down there.
This is all cut.
It's all cut.
All right, bye, everybody.